Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the 6th grade concept of describing data. This is standard 6.12b in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 37 of the 2017 released STAAR test. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and then we will look at our answers together. So we have a dot plot, sometimes called a line plot, and it shows the number of touchdowns a football team scored in 10 games last season. And you see with this dot plot, you simply have a dot representing each touchdown. So for each of these games, we had one game in which there were 0 touchdown scores. We had 3 games, because there are 3 dots, in which there were 1 touchdown scored. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games for 2 touchdowns, and then, wow, one game was 5 touchdowns. So there's your 10 total games. Now, all we need to do here is describe the data shown in the dot plot. And so let's just take a look at what we have here at A, B, C, and D. So the peak, that's our first term here, the peak. And we think of like a mountaintop, right? So think of like a mountain. We've got the peak. So this is the peak, so it's the very top. So the peak of the data is at 5. And as you can see here, our largest number is 5. That's the confusing part. Because even though there were 5 games in which they scored 2 touchdowns, the peak of the data is really here at 2. Because take a look, this is where most of your data is. It's right there at 2. So this one is actually not going to be correct, but I can see how some students might choose that one because there were 5 games in which they scored 2 touchdowns. If you wanted to see a dot plot in which the peak is at 5, you would do something like this. And you might get like 1 or 2, but then the 5 would have the most. So really you're just looking at what's the most, and this would be one that would have the peak at 5. The data are clustered. You notice how it says are clustered. That's an interesting thing. Data is plural. So rather than the data is, it's the data are clustered from 0 to 2. So our word we're looking at here is clustered. Well, think of like a cluster of grapes, right? And if we think of like a cluster of grapes, they are very closely packed, right? They're not spread out or anything like that. So that's why we call them a cluster of grapes, because they're all kind of bunched together. So look at our data. Is our data bunched together or clustered from 0 to 2? And yeah, that actually looks pretty good. Look, basically everything, 9 of the 10 is in 0 to 2. The only one that kind of sticks out here is your 5. But yeah, that actually looks pretty good. Most of them are between 0 and 2, with really most of them being between 1 and 2. The data distribution has no gaps. Well, a gap is just like what it says. It's a gap. And so if you're looking from 0 to 2, you would say yes. But take a look. We've got nothing here from 3 to 4. There are no games in which there were 3 touchdowns scored, no games in which there were 4 touchdowns scored, so this is a gap. A gap is just when you have some numbers in between those that represent different games, and there's nothing that represents 3 and 4. We do have gaps, so that's not going to work for us. And then finally, the data distribution is symmetrical. All right, so think of what we learned about symmetrical, right? A line of symmetry is when you have a shape. If you were to draw a circle, right? A line of symmetry is when you have, an exact line that you could fold that shape in half and it's exactly the same, like it's a mirror. Well, this data, if it's symmetrical, this is what it would look like. It would kind of look like this. You would have like a peak right here, maybe like a 3. And then it would kind of go down evenly on both sides, and it would look like it's kind of spread out the same. But it's not. It goes up to 2, then it's got a big gap, so it's not symmetrical, and our answer is B.